Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. All right, so it is the 27th here, and I'm in my Badu. You can see what the weather's like. It's cloudy and it's raining. It's misting here, and this is pretty much the only place to find a watch here in my Badu, unless you're willing to go Quartz, Alba, and Seiko, and just these roll like $200 or less watches. So let's see what kind of watches we can find out in the countryside of Fukuoka. Two Rolex watches fit for a man. They had a couple ladies' pieces. That's a ceramic sub, and it's from 2012. You can see it's running +6 a day. It's got that statement that it's been polished, and looks like a full set. Box, papers. You got the card right there. Right next to it, another date sub. This is a pre-ceramic sub, and you can see this has been polished as well. It's running +25 seconds a day. Not sure about the year. No papers with this piece, and it's a random serial number. They started doing the random serial numbers in 2011, and because we've got a 2012 ceramic sub right next to it, I think we can safely assume this is a 2011 piece or possibly an early 2012. Some Speedmasters, and coming off the Rolexes, Speedmasters always look really competitively priced, and you can see that they're really proud of their polished statements. I mean, dealers here think that customers want a polished piece, and I guess for the most part they do, but not all the customers, we know that. The piece on the left in the box is an automatic piece. It's running +20 seconds a day. Looks like it's got its box and papers all in order. To the right of that is a manual wind, and you can see that's running +7. We'll get back to that pre-ceramic 16610 in a second, but I know some of you guys are into luxury writing instruments, and these are pre-owned pieces. Not that much cheaper than new, but feel free to pause it, check out what they have. All right, and here it is. And I gotta say, this is a beautiful piece. Yes, it's been polished, but as you'll see, it's really hard to tell. What I'm looking at here is the engraved rehaut. Did they line up the crown at the 12? I think they nailed it. You know, some angles it looks slightly to the right or slightly to the left, but I think it really just depends on how you're holding the watch. Good enough. I mean, if I was looking to get this piece and all the other boxes were checked, I got to be honest, I wouldn't let a slight misalignment of that rehaut stop me. I think I could just probably have that rectified at the next service. You'll notice on these subs, they have the crown pulled out, and I think that's kind of weird. I don't think I'd want any debris to get in there, so I don't think I'd do that. It's not like you have to save the battery or anything like that. It's a nice shot of the side, beautiful width. And you can see that the crown on the clasp looks really nice. I mean, sometimes that can get thinned out when it gets polished, but that looks nearly perfect to me. If it wasn't already apparent, that's a solid in-link bracelet you can see right there. All right, so let's take a look at the back of the watch and the lugs. Now, I didn't have a loop with me, but it looked really good. I was just eyeballing it, and if they hadn't been so upfront with their polishing statement, I think I could have believed it was an unpolished piece. There's one shot where I think I would have been tipped off, but from this angle at least, everything looks really good. My guess is this just had one polish in its lifetime. Now, looking at the top of the lugs, from the top and on the side, between the top and the side, that's supposed to gradually flare out as it goes to the bottom of the lugs, and I'm not seeing that. But from this angle, everything looks good. Now this is the shot that would have tipped me off. It's on that bottom left lug. The shoulder doesn't flare out as it gradually approaches the chamfer as it should, and an ever so slight amount of polishing has run over on the front of the lug, which should be polished. I don't want to seem too hard on the piece. It's a beautiful piece. Just for educational purposes, we're picking it apart. It looks great on the wrist, and for a lot of people, this could be the perfect watch. I think it's a little bit expensive, especially since you're paying for something I don't really want, and that's the polish. Also, it doesn't come with papers, but for many people, this could be the ideal find. I love looking at these little bottles of whiskey. They had a bunch from Suntory and Nika. Nika, I want to say, doesn't have the best reputation, and that one I'm looking at right there, that's $20. So I don't think that offers bang for buck. You'll see what I went with later. But these are pre-owned unopened bottles. So if you're given a bottle of, say, good sherry or something like that, or good whiskey, you can take it here and flip it. If you go to a hostess club and you take a girl a really good bottle of brandy, she might take it here and flip it for some cash. All right, so looking at all these whiskeys, we're going for bang for buck. So which do you think I chose? I went with this, $3 for a 12-year-old Scotch. And for $8, this. Just thought I'd try some brandy. Plus, it's a big old little bottle. And Book Off is a one-stop shop. You can get glassware here too. All right, so too feminine. Can't drink whiskey out of that. You see something that would be fitting? The closest thing to a Glencairn glass. To quote RoboCop, I'd buy that for $1, and I did. All right, so here we are 24 hours later. I'm sitting in this little corner of the house, watching the rain hit the stone walkway, listening to the birds chattering. This is where I come to contemplate horology and perhaps enjoy a drop. Now, we had talked about a plan for Matt, and possibly one option was getting a black dialed Explorer 2 and then taking it to RSC to have the dial replaced at a cost. But it was something that he could do, right? Well, he did a little digging, and turns out that's not quite the case. I'll let Matt explain while I enjoy some Chivas.
Austin, good morning. So we had discussed the Rolex Explorer 2 and the issues with how expensive the polar dialed variant has become, especially with the caliber 3186. They tend to be somewhere around $7,000. And if they have box and papers, they can be up there around $10,000. If they're in truly mint condition, people are asking even far beyond that. However, the black dialed version is less. Box papers, about $2,000 less, and versus just the watch itself, about somewhere in the vicinity of $1,200 less. Take that black dial and those hands, remove them, and swap in a polar dial with the black hands, and you have a perfect polar. And people have done that. The problem is that I reached out to one of the most well-known service centers in the United States. I've used these guys before. They're very good. They have a Rolex parts account, and they said this is something they cannot do. Rolex will not sell them a dial, will not sell them hands. And even at this point on the caliber 3186, there are certain parts on that movement that Rolex will not share. So it's something they cannot do.
Well, this is the first time I've had Chivas in ages. This is a 12 years old and pretty good. Surprisingly good. All right, so what did we learn? Well, that's not an option, and Rolex is really strict in the USA with parts. I mean, that's amazing. Not being able potentially to service a pretty contemporary 3186 movement through somebody who has a parts account but can't get parts because Rolex is tight with them. They're afraid. I don't know. They're afraid perhaps that these people with a parts account will abuse the privilege. And I don't know, but it's a way to force people to come to RSC and just really have control over the parts and where they go. I suppose, potentially they could go out the back door, these independents that have the parts account. But yeah, so there goes that. And Matt actually confirmed it via another dealer and service center with a parts account with Rolex, and let him explain.
And of course, I also reached out to Kenan at Jewelers on Time. Kenny's a great guy. He got right back to me, and he verified this. He says it's just not something they can do. So if I was able to source a dial in hands, he could do the swap for me, but servicing that particular movement could be difficult. They might not be able to do that. So I just think that this is very interesting, what's going on. Rolex has really brought down the hammer. They want total control. And if I'm looking to have a Rolex Explorer 2 with the polar dial, hey, baby, I have to pony up the money.
All right, so there you go. All right, so I've got a little list here, and this is a list I made of the places, the countries, not an exhaustive list, where you could take your GMT Master 2 16710 and have the bezel insert changed out. And I think it's related to this topic because we're talking changing out parts. And I've got a list of countries right here where you cannot do that. The USA, Canada, here in Asia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong. You cannot take your 16710 Pepsi there and make it a Coke. I have a list here of the countries where you can. Japan. That is all. All right, now, it's not an exhaustive list, and I'd love to make an exhaustive list. So I'm calling on you viewers, if you want to participate in this, give RSC a call in your country, if you're living in Australia or you're living in a country that I didn't mention, and ask them if you could change out, say, a Pepsi bezel for a Coke or an all-black bezel on, say, a 16710, and get back to me. Leave a comment in the comment section. And here we have a list of places where you can't do it and the one place you can, and it's kind of surprising. Now, again, it's related to what Matt's talking about because we're talking replacing dials, changing out dials and hands, making an Explorer to Polar Black or vice versa, and changing your Coke to a Pepsi or a Pepsi to a Coke or an all black. And it just has to do with a little bit more liberalness in terms of parts. You know what's surprising to me? Japan is a place where the rule is very important. I mean, rules are really important here. Rules are respected, they're followed, and things are a little bit strict. In fact, Japan has sort of a reputation for being a strict country all around. And so it's surprising that they are the only country on my list to be liberal with parts. Why is that? Now, I guess one reason is because they may have a penchant for following the rules, and so the idea of somebody abusing it here and taking their GMT multiple times and getting bezels and selling them on eBay is something that I wouldn't expect a typical Japanese person to do. That's just a little in the gray, a little distasteful. And so maybe they're rewarded for that mindset by being allowed to get a little crazy with these models and change out dials and bezel inserts. All right, the kids are approaching, and my moment of horological peace is about to be shattered, but I will leave you with Matt's take on the rehot, the engraved rehot. And, like I said in the last video, any 3186 movement is going to have that rehot. It's going to have a solid end-link bracelet. It's going to have a no-holes case. But those Z serials, when they started the rehot, those early Z serials are going to have the 3185 movement, and the engraved rehot. It's only the later Z serials where they start that. So the engraved rehot is not a sign of the 3186 movement, but it's a good indicator, because any model after 2008 is going to have both. But just to be clear, any 3186 movement Explorer 2 is going to have that rehot. All right. So let's hear Matt's take on the rehot. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. See you next time.
One last thing that I should mention in my research in regards to pricing. It is amazing how having an engraved rehot is a $1,000 premium. There are plenty of the watches that are out there, the polar dials, that have the 3186 movement. They have screws instead of pins in the links, solid end links, okay, no holes case, and that's fantastic. But if you want an engraved rehot, they are significantly more expensive. And let's face it, I can understand why. It just looks amazing. It just has that sense of class. So I get it. But boy, oh boy, prices are insane.